Hiya, Carl Chinn here, having another chat about old Brum and history for Birmingham Live. What makes most people interested in the past? To me, it's got to be the stories that were passed on by our mums and dads, our nans and granddads, and all our forebears who've gone before us. For most of us, when we learnt history at school, it had nothing to do with our own people. It was about rich people, kings, queens, prime ministers, presidents, battles, generals. But increasingly, more and more of us are realising that the written and spoken word of so-called ordinary people is not just ordinary, it's extraordinary. And one of the pioneers of that movement was a man called Charles Parker. I'm going to find out more about him today.
Well, he was a radio producer in Birmingham, and I met him when I was at university here. He came to speak to one of the dinners, and it was just so inspiring. He's got such a presence, such charisma. And he was talking about ordinary people and how their speech is so important, and how the way that they speak is like poetry when they're speaking their own language as opposed to some kind of received pronunciation English. And so I got involved with him from then on, and he had a real impact on everybody he met. They were always attracted to him, and he inspired them to work in whatever field they were working in.
So what was the work that he did, Pam?
Well, when he first came to work in Birmingham, they'd only just got midget tape recorders available. And prior to that, people had to go into studios to be recorded, but he could actually go to people in their workplace or wherever and record them, and they were just talking their ordinary everyday speech, their vernacular speech. And he recorded hundreds of hours and then cut off the best bits, put them all together and made programs out of them. And it was the first time that kind of technique was used. And now it's very commonplace, of course, but he was out pioneer in that area, because before that they'd done it all in studios. And in fact, they would record people and then they'd type it all out, and then they'd get some kind of, BBC actor to read it. Well, I mean, when you hear people speaking their own voices, their own accents, their own vernacular, it's just immediate.
And what kind of things did he talk to people about, Pam?
Well, he talked to them about their work, but he talked to them about everything. He talked to them about their beliefs and what was important to them, and politics and action and everything, all kind of things.
So what is then the archive?
Well, the archive really consists of all his tapes that he made.
Yeah.
There's about 5,000 hours there.
5,000 hours?
Yeah. And so they're all there with all the backup material. Because he was a radio producer, there was a lot of sort of administration behind that, and so there's all the records of how the programmes were made. But also, of course, he went on after that to take part in Birmingham life, in its artistic and cultural life, by forming Banner Theatre. And so that, again, everything was always documented, all the tapes that were recorded and documented. So there's a lot of paperwork, and he had a wonderful library as well, which he always made available to all of us, because we could go along and use it at any time,
So how did Birmingham Library's archives get hold of this archive?
Well, after Charles died, we set up the Charles Parker Archive Trust, and we were looking for a home for it. In fact, it was here at Birmingham University Library for a little while, but it was right and proper. It should be in a public place.
Yes.
And so it was taken into Birmingham City Library and put in the archives there.
And can people look at it? Can people go and access it?
People can, to some extent, go and access it, although the tapes are to actually listen to the tapes isn't possible, of course, because they've got to be protected. And we're doing our best to make cassette copies of them. But of course, funding only permits so much, So
if you want to know more about the Charles Parker Archive, get in touch with Fiona Tate. She's an archivist at Birmingham Library, the Central Library in Chamberlain Square. Carl Chinn for Birmingham Live. Ta-ra a bit.